Today we're going to discuss what so many people get wrong about midterm rental pricing. This is a strategy for your 30 plus day furnished rental, and it will work on any platform. So Furnished Finder, Airbnb, Zillow, etc. And the approach I'll explain works particularly well for midterm rentals because of the length of most midterm rental contracts. The reason I wanted to make this video is because this continues to be an area where I see my consulting clients really get in their own way. In fact, this is maybe the most expensive mistake I see new landlords making, and in my opinion, it's also something we don't talk about enough. People come to me and they want to talk about proximity to hospitals, they want to talk about insurance claims, nurses, they ask if it matters if they have parking, etc. And I fully understand why people ask these questions, but really this thing that I'm going to talk about in this video matters more. I don't want to be hyperbolic, but it might be the factor that matters the most when it comes to the success of your midterm rental or any rental for that matter. So just quickly, who am I? Why would you care about anything that I'm about to say? Well, I'm Erin Spradlin. This is my channel. I have written 3 books, all available on Amazon, for new landlords in the midterm rental space. And these books are targeted toward people that want help with their first tenants, so finding tenants, the lease, etc. I have had my own rental property since 2014, and I've been focused on getting midterm rentals from Furnished Finder and Airbnb since 2017. In addition to writing the books, for the past 2 to 3 years, I've been making videos, and I am also a consultant that works one-to-one with aspiring landlords. And if you want more info on my consulting services, I'll talk about them at the very end of this video. That way you can drop off if you don't care about those services, and you won't miss any of the content in this video that matters to you. I got into this business because the midterm rental space has been really good for us and really good for our goals. And those goals were more about our lifestyle and less about crushing deals and making a ton of money. I always approach my rentals as how are they going to serve me and how are they going to work for us. And so we wanted to diversify our retirement. We wanted to live abroad for a little while, and rentals, and specifically midterm rentals, have helped us accomplish a lot of our goals. Okay, so back to how most landlords lose the most money. We're going to start with everybody's universal favorite thing, which is math. What I want you to do is take the mortgage for your rental property and divide that number by 200. You can write that number down and set it aside on a piece of paper, or you can put it in a comment for this video, because I'm sure your peers watching this video will also be interested. So the mortgage on the last personal property that we rented out is $2,490, so $2,490. And that $2,490 includes tax and insurance, but it does not include the cost of my utilities or my trash. So if we divide $2,490 by 200, the number we get is 12.45, and we are going to round that down to 12. So if we want to include all the expenses, utilities, trash, Wi-Fi, an HOA fee if you have one, the monthly amount for that property, for the property that I'm renting, is $2,750. So this number, $2,750, is also our break-even point. This is because your break-even point includes anything that you have to pay for the property to be rent-ready. And in the midterm space, it's slightly higher because we're paying for all the services like the utilities. Now, if we divide $2,757 by 200, we get 13.7. We will round this number up to 14. So 14 is my number. Something I see a lot of people with analysis paralysis do is fixate on the numbers. So if you don't know all the costs, like the Wi-Fi, the utilities, etc., you can get hung up and have trouble moving on to the next step. This is counterproductive because we don't need our numbers to be perfect. We need them to be instructional. And you will see for this, we can figure out a lot by just having the mortgage, even if in an ideal scenario, you would record the monthly amount for utilities, etc., in addition to the mortgage. And the reason I'm saying this is because if you have the mortgage amount, just divide that number by 200. Round it up or round it down and then set it aside. Now, if you have both numbers, both your mortgage plus all your expenses, that's a better number, and that's the one we want to use. But if you only have your mortgage, that also will be very instructional, so just take that number and set it aside. And before we get into part 3, if you have found any part of this video helpful so far, please like it. If you find any part of this video helpful in the future, please like it. All right, so my consulting client yesterday has a fully furnished property that he wasn't sure what rent price he should list at, and or if it even makes sense to do a midterm rental. Like a lot of people in the United States, he has noticed a softening in the rental market. I personally have felt this has been the hardest year since 2017 to secure midterm rental tenants, regardless of whether or not you are sourcing them from Furnished Finder, Airbnb, or Zillow. And there are a couple of reasons for this new difficulty in the midterm rental market. I think the third and last one I mentioned may surprise you, or at the very least, it surprised me. So first, we have more competition. A lot of landlords are dropping out of the short-term rental market and entering the midterm rental market. This is likely because the regulation either changed in the city where the landlord is, so the city outlawed rentals for fewer than 30 days, or it is because the landlord just burned out on doing STRs and moved into the midterm rental space because we still get elevated rents, but it's a far easier business. Second, there's a lot of anxiety in the US right now, and that's because there's so much chaos and so much change, and because of that, we may be seeing people spend less money because of their concerns. That said, I'm recording this video right before July 4th, and there's a lot of travel indicators that suggest that we are going to see an increase in travel and more money enter the market, at least the STR market, around July 4th. Third and final, the one that was really interesting to me, is that rents have decreased nationwide as of this recording for 20 straight months. Peak for rent rates was August 2022, and while this study is speaking specifically to long-term unfurnished rentals, we baseline our midterm rentals off of long-term unfurnished rental rates. So if our long-term rent rates decrease, our midterm rental rates will decrease as well. This is good news if you are a tenant, and it is bad news if you are a landlord. Regardless, this is where we are at. Some of this is seasonal, but a lot of it is not. If you are in a place with a traditional winter season, your lowest monthly rate will be November and December. And if you are in Florida, Arizona, parts of Mexico, your lowest monthly rate may be summer. And the reason I am mentioning seasonality here is because some people, in fact, a lot of people actually will say to me, I have to at least hit my break-even point. This makes sense to all of us. Of course, you don't want to pay for someone else to live in your property. And obviously, it's not a good investing strategy to lose money. However, a lot of people accept that you will have to reduce your rent pricing during your down seasons, and in some cases, you may even be floating the property for $100 or $200 each month during that down season. A lot of people help themselves when they think about the rental on an annual level versus a monthly level. They don't get hung up on losing money some months because they know when they look at the rental on the annual level, they will come out ahead. This is the right way to think about your rental, but it is the wrong scope. What I mean by that is, if you look at the property on an annual level, you are fine if not every month is a banger month, but because you assume that you're going to make up for that lost income later in the season. And the reason the scope is wrong is because it is on a monthly and annual level. Successful investors typically extrapolate that to the entire timeline of the property. This is why most people in the United States got rich from real estate before furnished rentals and high cash flow were even a thing. They made some money around the margins on cash flow, but most of their money came from appreciation, just like the stock market. Now, you may not accept these terms. You may feel unwilling or uncomfortable with the risk. And if you are, I get that. But I would also say real estate right now may not be for you. World example. And with that, so let's say your property is not renting. You have had it listed for 6 weeks. The price you have dropped it to is barely breaking even, and the only interested party that has come in the last 3 weeks said they could only afford to pay $25.50 for 2 months, and they could not pay any more. Since you have already priced your rental property so low, you decide to decline those tenants and just go back to the listing and work on that. So you add a note about the property being 2 miles from a Trauma 1 facility, and you say, I just can't take that rent. Now let's think about this. It's been sitting for 6 weeks, so that's likely 2 mortgage payments. And in my case, since the property that we listed last had a break-even point of $27.57 a month, that is over $5,500 that we have spent while it just sits. This right here is the problem. If you had taken the tenant for $25.50 per month, you would have lost $200 per month. So 6 weeks in, you would be down about $400 for both months, which is substantially better than being down $5,500. I am sure you don't love that, as I wouldn't either, but in the alternate, those 2 mortgage payments at $27.57 per month would have come out to more than $5,500. And if you divide $5,500 by 200, you get 27.5. So if we round that up to 28 and we divide 28 by 12, we get 2 years and 4 months. So those renters that just came in that wanted to rent for 2 months at $200 below market value, they would have had to have stayed in your property for 2 years and 4 months straight before you would have lost the same amount that you have lost with the vacancy just sitting for 2 months. This is why vacancy is your biggest enemy in rentals, and that's any kind of rental, and that's because it is so hard to make up for those losses. The other way to think about this, especially if you are listing for the first time, is that if you list your place and you underprice it and you get $200 per month less in rents than you think you should or you should, just consider this the cost of education. In fact, be thankful for the tenant because they're paying for most of your mortgage while you test out what the price actually should be. If you have a tenant underpaying the first month or so, you can spend that time testing out the interest that you get from different tenants at different price points. You are now getting paid while you do the test versus having to pay the full mortgage while doing that test. Now, if you refer to the number we did at the beginning of this video, so my number was 14, it was my carrying cost divided by 200. If my property sits vacant for just 1 month, it costs me the same as if I rented out 200 below my break-even point of $27.57. This is a much larger problem if you're renting for a full year. If you rent your property for a full year, you might be inclined to let it go vacant for a month to get a higher rent. But most people in the midterm rental space are not renting for a year. Furnished Finder quotes the average rental period being 90 days, but I think that's based off of nurses' schedules. So I'm not sure that I think the average is 90 days, but let's say anywhere between 1 month and 4 months is the average. And if the average is between 1 and 4 months, if you have dropped your rent rates enough, you can get someone in there for that shortened period of time, meaning they're paying something while you figure out what the real price should be or what the problem is with the rental. And again, getting in any money is a much better situation than having no money. On that note, if you can divorce yourself from the pressure of cash flow and just rely more on appreciation, that also will help you start investing. You can get more clinical in your rental analysis and numbers as you purchase more properties, understand the market better, etc. But perfectionist landlords tend to want all the answers up front, and this usually really delays a purchase / results in never becoming an investor, and or some answers are just going to be unknowable until you get into the game. Sometimes I also have to tell my consulting clients that the answer isn't satisfying. It's just making the better decision amongst your options. I think a good analogy for this is insurance or your job or raising a kid or buying a car. By the way, if you want the budgeting doc that I flashed in the beginning of this video and or a free midterm rental lease, you can download both of these for free here. They are in the green section of my website. I will also drop that link in the top comment of this video. Okay, at this point, I'm going to discuss my consulting services. This is a great time to drop off the video if you don't need any more help. So when I started as a landlord, I thought it would be really helpful to have someone with more experience hold my hand through my questions around insurance, LLC, tenant vetting, background questions, squatters, leases, etc. There's just a ton to learn when you are a new landlord. So after having my own properties and also seeing that this was not just how I felt at the beginning of the rental process, but also how a lot of my real estate investor clients felt, I started to offer this to people. So what I'm talking about is I have a package called the Hold Your Hand package, and I will hold your hand through your first rental. And with this package, you will have 8 hours of consulting time with me. I will set up your listing across the 3 major platforms. I'll build your lease and house rules documentation. I will vet and set your first client, and I'll hang out on the account for the first month of their stay so that if questions come up, we can figure out the answers together. And clients end that month with a few remaining hours of consulting time and then often come back like 4 tenants later when they have a specific question. The purpose of this package is to get you up to speed quickly on your first rental with custom coaching. You work one-to-one with me. I only take 3 Hold Your Hand clients per month to guarantee that I'm available, and you can learn more about that here.